Our next speaker, Kabir, Rayah, Mohammed, James Fowler. Kabir, Rayah, Mohammed, James Fowler High School. I'd like to invite you to the stage. Title of his speech, Migration. Title of his speech, Migration, Kabir, Rayah, Mohammed.
Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullahi wa sahabi ajma'in. Amma ba'd, a'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi adkhilni mudkhal sidqin wa akhrijni mukhraj sidqin waj'al li min ladunka sultanan nasira. Rabbi ishrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. My name is Kabir Rayah Mohammed, and the topic of my presentation is migration of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today, inshallah, we will learn about how, why, and when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina. The key points of my presentation are how Quraysh plots to assassinate Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's strategic plan to migrate, and what we learn from the migration, how Prophet Muhammad ﷺ arrives in Medina, and the dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His final and most beloved Prophet to renew the call for Islam in a society drowning in ignorance. At the age of 40, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had his first revelation. These revelations continued for the next 23 years and are now compiled into a book that is known all over the world as the glorious Quran. From when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam started preaching Islam, he faced persecution. The disbelievers used to throw stones and trash at Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the Quraysh also tortured the believers of Islam in many different ways. For example, tying their hands and legs and placing a big boulder on their chest to break their ribs, tying their legs on back of horses so that they were dragged in the streets of Mecca. After 13 years of hardships and sacrifices in Mecca, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Prophet Muhammad ﷺ permission to migrate to Medina. But why? Why was the migration necessary? Almost every single person in this room has migrated from another country. Why? People migrated in search of a better life and for the future of their kids in this dunya. But Allah's most beloved Prophet, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, migrated for the sake of Allah and to please Him. The migration from Mecca to Medina was a really important one. However, it wasn't the first migration of Islam. The first migration of Islam was from Mecca to Abyssinia, or modern-day Ethiopia. In this migration, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself didn't migrate, but his companions, the Sahabas, migrated to Abyssinia. This migration took place because the Prophet's companions were being severely tortured in Mecca. As Prophet Muhammad ﷺ started to preach Islam, more and more people started following it. This became problematic for the Quraysh, and it began threatening its stand among the Arabs. Many believers were tortured in Mecca, so Prophet Muhammad ﷺ advised them to migrate to Medina. This is the reason why a lot of the Prophet's companions migrated. The Quraysh feared that the Prophet would soon migrate to Medina as well. And if that happened, then Medina would become the home to all Muslims and Islam would spread. The Quraysh feared that Muslims will grow powerful and take control of northern Arabia and Syria. If this happened, it would disrupt the Quraysh's trade route to Syria. In order to discuss this issue, the leaders of all tribes of Quraysh held a meeting at Dar al-Nadwa. Shaitan himself disguised in a human form and attended the meeting. They planned that each man from every single tribe would be stationed outside the house of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and in the morning, when the Prophet comes outside his house, they would attack him. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the knower of the unseen, and He knew about the Quraysh's plan to assassinate the Prophet. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is informed of the Quraysh's evil plan and plans on what to do. Soon, Quraysh's men surrounded the Prophet's house, but they were unaware of what was going to happen. The Prophet asked his cousin Ali radiallahu anhu to sleep in his bed. Then, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ took a handful of dust in his hand. Then, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went outside, reciting Surah Yasin, and sprinkled it on the men. A miracle happened, and the attackers didn't see Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ managed to save himself from the evil plot of Quraysh. But he still wasn't out of danger. After leaving his house, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went to the house of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu in the middle of the night. After meeting with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ started planning for the migration. He hired one of the best navigators, Amir ibn Abdullah bin Uraykit. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had prepared food and necessary items needed for the migration. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu started the migration, and they traveled opposite to Medina to the cave of Thawr. And in the morning, the Quraysh went inside the Prophet's house, but they were unable to find him. They burst out in rage and anger, trying to find the Prophet, but they weren't able to, but the Prophet was nowhere to be found. A bounty of 200 camels was placed upon the heads of both Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. The Quraysh men almost found out Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the cave of Thawr, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved his Prophet in an incredible way. To save the two men, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a spider to spin a web at the entrance of the cave. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu spent 3 days in the cave of Thawr, and on the 4th day they departed towards Medina. During their stay in the cave, a slave that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had freed, Amir ibn Rayah, used to graze his flock of sheep near the cave so that they could milk the sheep and drink. Abdullah, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's son, used to keep them informed of the situation in Mecca until things settled down and people lost faith in locating them. They faced many hardships along the way, which time doesn't permit me to talk about, but at last, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help and guidance, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam finally arrived in Medina, and he was welcomed like a king. The scene that took place when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was entering Medina was quite strange, because people were eagerly waiting for the Prophet, and when he finally arrived at Medina, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was sitting on the camel, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was holding the rope of the camel. They were interchanging positions along the way. Subhanallah, look at the humbleness of the Prophet. There's so much that we can learn from this point alone. I would like to conclude this presentation with a dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran in Surah Al-Isra. رَبِّ أَدْخِلْنِي مُدْخَلَ صِدْقٍ وَأَخْرِجْنِي مُخْرَجَ صِدْقٍ وَاجْعَلْ لِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ سُلْطَانًا نَصِيرًا. This dua is connected to migration, and I will elaborate how. Rabbi adkhilni mudkhala sidqin means, my Lord, cause me to enter a sound entrance. In this context, it means a safe and sound entrance to Medina. Wa akhrijni mukhraja sidqin means to exit a sound exit. In this context, it means a safe and sound exit from Mecca. Waj'al li min ladunka sultanan nasira means, and aid me with huge and gigantic help. In this context, it means help Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to establish an Islamic state in Medina. According to many scholars, this dua is not only for migration, but it's for anything and everything. Whenever you're in a problem and that problem is resolved, you're just heading towards another problem. There won't be a time in your life where you don't have problems. By reciting this dua, you're just saying to Allah, "Oh Allah, grant me a sound exit from this problem and a sound entrance to the other problem, and help aid me in this problem." There's also another ayah in the surah that teaches us an important lesson. If we look at the first ayah in Surah Al-Isra, it's talking about the Miraj. However, that's another topic, and you cannot combine these two topics. In the story of Miraj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a horse-type creature called the Buraq. Now the Buraq is lightning fast. If Prophet Muhammad ﷺ wanted, he could have made dua for the Buraq and traveled to Medina within seconds. But this does not happen. This teaches us an important lesson. Allah's help will come on Allah's schedule, not on our schedule. Whenever we're making dua, it's like we're placing an order. We should not do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fulfill your request or He won't. That's His will. The migration of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a great example for the entire ummah. How he and the Muslims sacrificed their everything. For the sake of Allah and to please Him. A lot of the Muslims in this country today have migrated from different countries for a better life in this dunya. Allah mashallah. But Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated for the sake of Allah and to please Him. I would like to thank the YSC conference for letting me speak here on the stage. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Thank you for patiently listening to my presentation.
Jazakallahu khairan rahmatullah. Now we'll have a minute for the judges to complete their ballots.